in Vienna. It's a pity actually I can't show you the other one because it was probably better than these two. But people often look at that one and they laugh and they find it has a more humorous quality than some of these. Yeah, it's probably about me laughing at myself in some ways. Yeah, okay.
Die Batterie, ich muss kurz die Batterie wechseln.
Let's go back to tradition of like paintings in the 40s, 50s style-wise and also like from technique. And so I also thought about the Northern Soul scene because there you have music that's
retrospective in a way.
Kept alive in a way.
Yeah.
And it's also not very, it's a very separated scene in a way still, but maybe this is a visual analogy to the music in a way.
Analogy, yes, I think there is a relationship. It's not intended, but it's for sure there. One of the things I really like about the Northern Soul scene is that the way records are selected and played and enjoyed, not because who made them. Who made them is completely irrelevant. It could be somebody really famous like Curtis Mayfield or the Jacksons, or it could be somebody completely unheard of with a very unmarketable name like Spencer Wiggins or something like that. I mean, there's no way that you could be number one with a name like Spencer Wiggins. Do you see what I mean? The name doesn't matter. The label doesn't matter. The circumstances in which the record was made doesn't matter. It's purely about the sound, the atmosphere, the feeling of that record. And in a way, it's got a kind of purity, which is attractive, which mainstream pop industry does not have. It's all about who made the record. Was it Michael Jackson or was it, some other big star? That's important to them. And half the records that are played on the radio nearly all of them are absolute shit anyway. So I remember when I got into Northern Soul, it was the mid-80s, and it was a particularly bland era for pop music, and the stuff in the charts was just, it had no authenticity. It was completely plastic, 90% of it. And it's the same today. I mean, do you listen to what's in the charts? I don't. Yes, so I think there's something about the authenticity, about the way and the honesty, that the way artists approached their work in the 1930s and 40s. They were figurative artists. Their work was about looking, but it wasn't only that. If you look at an artist like Edward Hopper, the American artist, his work is figurative. But it's not only figurative, it's conceptual as well. It's about something other than what is depicted. It may be a woman in a motel, but it's not only about that. The themes are about, they're about loneliness, they're about unimaginable space, they're about infinity, they're about all kinds of things that are more than what is on the surface. And artists that made Northern Soul records, most of these people never got famous. They probably earn less from what I do from my paintings, and they never will be famous. But there's something about their recordings that has an honesty and an energy which you don't get in chart music. And the irony of it is that most of those people were not trying to make authentic, honest records. Most of those people were having a go at making a hit and making money and getting into the big time and getting into the mainstream. That would have been their aim. But they failed to do that, and in failing to do that, they created something much better, something beautiful. These records are beautiful. There's no doubt about that. They're like everything else, Northern Soul and other club dance scenes, they have fashions, and you know, a lot of rubbish records get played as well, but there are certain tunes that I've heard for 20 years, and when I hear them again, they still have a resonance, they still say something to me, you know, and this is quite something. It happens, there are modern records made like that as well, but I think it takes time for a really good record to come to the surface and for people to realise that it's got some kind of lasting quality. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. You are a painter and a dancer, dealing with soul sujets. Yeah. What is the feeling of both of your professions or both of your passions? What do you feel in both?
For me, soul, I actually use it on my business card, the word soul. I call myself a soul artist, and this is kind of a joke in a way, it's my little joke, because the music of soul is important to me, but also it's important that in the work that I do, in my artwork and in other related creative work, the soul of the work is what is important. I look around at most contemporary art, and for me it has no soul. Work that is purely conceptual seems to be all about the head, working out a clever idea mentally and then creating it for a clinical gallery setting. That's what most art is about today. I'm not about that. And the music that I like is not about that either. It's about, of course it has to use the head, but it uses the heart and the hand, the skill of the musician, the skill of the artist, the feeling and emotional commitment of the artist, whether he's a musician or a painter. These things are important to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What does the soul dance express for you?
For me, soul dance or soul dancing expresses so many things. The records are exciting, they have atmosphere, some of them have a lot of drama, almost melodramatic. The rhythm is important. In Northern Soul, you always have that simple 4 beats to a bar, like you also did in rock and roll and many other kinds of music. It's in swing as well. So you always got that as a background. But there's more going on as well. You may have more rhythm stuff going on with percussion. And the thing about Northern Soul, which was maybe lost later on in the 1970s when the disco thing happened, what Northern Soul has that's really quite special is it has these dramatic breaks, you know, with horn arrangements or string arrangements where you get the record chipping in at a certain beat and it kind of gets you going, and you're getting a feeling and your body's responding to that. When you dance, you are actually expressing an understanding and appreciation of that music, and you're in there doing it, and then it kind of builds to a point, and there's this thing that we dancers call the break, and it will be like the rhythm stops for a while and you just get like a little trumpet solo, which comes from jazz actually. And this is the other thing that's really interesting about soul music. It's a hybrid music. It comes from gospel, it comes from jazz, it comes from blues, and all those things are in there. And that uplifting, spiritual thing coming from gospel is in there all the time. And it just, it's a redemption feeling, actually. You can be having all kinds of shit going on in your life, and you go to an event. It's like how Christians might feel about going to church. Gospel people didn't like it when Sam Cooke and Otis Redding started using gospel values in their music. But for me, that's when it became real. Leave the religion, the dogma, the control of religion, forget all that. The Bible, it's just a pack of stories. Useful as a pack of stories, but that's all it is. You know, the reality of spirituality, the reality of the human condition is much more than that, I think. And in soul music, I feel it there. And anyway, the break is great because the beat stops for a while or becomes less important, and you get this kind of punctuating ba 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 or something, you know. And when, as a dancer, it's an opportunity to really let go. So you come out of the sort of day-to-day rhythm, and you can invent stuff, and you can improvise like a jazz musician with your floor moves and stuff like that, you know. And then it's only short, maybe a few seconds, and then you're back in the rhythm again. Bam, bam, bam. Yeah, that's how it is for Northern Soul. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, we have to change.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Unique about Northern Soul. Okay, so what's special about Northern Soul that's different to other related music, like disco or jazz, or what's different? Okay, what's unique?
Okay. So will you think it over or?
I'm thinking it over. What's unique? And what was the other question?
The other question is
just one after a time, please. Just one question.
Okay,
right
so
now.
What's unique, and then we break, and then you ask the other one. Yeah, it's better.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me just think.
Okay, tell us if you're.
When you're ready, then we can switch on the camera.
Okay.
What's unique about Northern Soul, i.e. the soul music made in America in the 1960s at that point, is, I think, firstly, it has an amazing optimistic energy. It has an optimism that the blues didn't have, and it's got a speed and an energy in that 4 beats to a bar that comes from earlier rock and roll and R&B. But it's got more of an edge than the earlier records. They started to work with production, but it's not overproduced. Some of the records sound like they're made in a biscuit tin. The rhythm is important, and they worked on that a lot. It's often quite minimal, with the bass and a sharp drum.
That's the length we need. Yeah.
Okay.
Great. Okay. Mm-hmm.
And the second thing is you talked about the importance of the break for dancer.
Yes.
So, in 3 sentences.
3 sentences. Okay. The break is for a dancer is really important. Once you know these records, you get to know the timing and what happens when, and you kind of, when you're dancing, you want to, you're relating to the record. You want to express your knowledge of it and your feeling for it. The beat comes in, and it's like regular 4 beats to a bar. It's got an edge to it. It's quite fast, and you kind of get into a groove. The break is important because it punctuates that groove. So all of a sudden, it's like the horns come in, and all of a sudden you're in a little bit of jazz world because you've got trumpets going, or you might have a little string arrangement, and it gives you a little bit of freedom where you can really let go for a while. You can jump around, do some improvisation on the floor, and then you've got to bring it all back on the beat to go into that rhythm again when the break's finished. So it involves improvisation, but and kind of display, but it also needs discipline because you've got to keep in that time.
Perfect. I'd like to ask you a little bit personal history. Yeah. Could you remember the initial song of soul music you heard that hit your heart? Can you? 3 sentences. One sentence.
What really sticks in my mind is going to the first Northern Soul all-nighter on the end of Morecambe Pier in, I think, 1985. And I walked in to this little hallway with some fruit machines on the side and a little guy in a little DJ box, and they were playing Junior Walker's Roadrunner. And it was just like bang, you know, it was not the rarest record on earth, but it's just got everything. It epitomises a good Northern Soul record. It's got that beat that's slightly trying to run ahead of itself because it's so excited, and it's got the blues in there, it's got jazz in there, it's got gospel, it's everything. It's got breaks, but it's got a really powerful rhythm, and it was just like woof, you know, when I went in there. I don't think that I had heard the record before. In fact, I do remember on that first all-nighter going to this event and just being amazed because I heard 8 hours of music and there was only one record that I recognised. And that was somebody who was into soul music. I thought I knew about it, but you couldn't get access to it, you know, through mainstream ways. All you knew about was Motown and the This Is Soul compilations. There wasn't, you know, which was basically Stax Records, nothing else. You didn't come across it. James Brown as well, you came across that, but, you know, it was like a whole world opening up.
Super purpose of those.
The purpose of the fruit machines, well, there is no purpose regarding our dancing event. But this is the whole point of these events, is that they are created in spaces that were made for something else. The most successful Northern Soul clubs in England were made in big Victorian 19th century dance halls with balconies and a big wooden dance floor that's designed for waltzing. You know, Morecambe Pier is an amusements pier on the seaside, sticking out into the North Sea. You walked in and you were more or less in what in daytime would be an amusement arcade. But it had a wooden floor. There were 2 rooms at Morecambe. Yeah, and this was the first room, what they would call the oldies room. And it was just a small space with a wooden floor, some fruit machines. There may have been a coffee bar, I can't remember. And so it's this space that's designed for something else. It's been hijacked for this secretive, strange event that nobody knows about. In those days, you could not find any information whatsoever about Northern Soul through any mainstream outlet. Newspapers, TV, nothing. It did not exist. The only way that you could find out about it was to buy an obscure music paper that went bust about 10 years ago called Echoes. Or initially it was called Black Echoes, then it changed its name to Echoes. And it was a magazine about all kinds of soul music. But the back page, it would list all the Northern Soul events going on every week. And there would always be 5 or 6. And this was after Wigan closed, when supposedly the Northern Soul scene was dead. There would be 5 or 6 events on every week in the north of England, sometimes down south as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Wow.
Maybe to start with.
Also, interestingly, Morecambe Pier doesn't exist anymore. It became derelict and was washed away by the sea.
And perhaps you could say also the time when you entered there.
Yeah.
I think what 1980 whatever.
It was 85, I think.
Yeah.
And included it was like one of the first experiences.
Yeah.
That was the first experience of a proper Northern Soul all-nighter for me.
You put it also in it that it was your first.
So everybody will know what you're talking about.
Okay.
Great.
Okay.
My first experience of a Northern Soul event was in 1985. I went to an all-nighter at Morecambe Pier. I walked in through the door. I walk into a small space with fruit machines round the edge of the room, maybe a small coffee bar, a pokey little DJ box, and a nice wooden floor, not too big. And it was a space that was designed for something else, that had been hijacked for our secret music dance event. And that was the attraction of it. Everything was upside down. We were out dancing in the middle of the night till 8 a.m. Yeah?
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah. And how you feel in this place right now? Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Perhaps different to what you are used to.
Yeah, for sure, yeah. Well, the irony of it is the reason I am in Vienna is because of Northern Soul.
So I'm really sorry, but I just missed the first sentence.
But a great sentence, please.
Ready?
Yeah.
The irony of it is that the reason that I am in Vienna is because of Northern Soul. And it's strange, but many of the important things in my life have been in some way connected to Northern Soul. What actually happened was I went with a friend of mine from London, Dominic, to Rimini to celebrate he was getting married the next weeks and it was a stag do. But we had planned to go to a Northern Soul do that is held once a year in Rimini. So we went to this event on the Saturday, had a really good dance, and I met Lisa, who is my partner now, and she is a Northern Soul girl, and she's from Vienna. And we met there, and in less than 3 months, around that kind of time, I decided to move to Vienna to be with her.
And what did you know already about Vienna before you came here? What were your expectations?
What did I know about Vienna? Unlike most British people, I knew that Vienna was not in Italy, and I didn't get it mixed up with Venice, but I did not know an awful lot more about Vienna, except that it was a place of kind of artistic and intellectual activity at the end of the 19th century. But since the war, you see, Britain, it's kind of gone off the map for Britain. We in Britain don't hear much about Vienna, we don't know much about it anymore. And what we do know is kind of out-of-date history.
And concerning your soul passion, what did you find here in Vienna concerning soul? What places, what dancing possibilities, etc. did you find here?
I'll be honest with you, I would not be here now, I don't think, if I did not see a potential that I could live here and be happy. And in order to live in a place and be happy, I have to be able to go out and dance sometimes. And Lisa took me to some of the events at Otto Wagner, and I just really enjoyed it actually. And I just thought, well, this is really quite laid back and pleasant, and you could go and dance and have a beer, and you didn't have to worry about getting the night bus or getting thrown out at 3 a.m. as you would in a normal club in England. There were certain things about Viennese life that were quite attractive and more laid back compared to England. And that was an enjoyable experience. And I suppose that was one of the things that I thought, oh, actually, it might be possible to live here. I mean, it wouldn't have entered my head, you know. I think Lisa, first of all, suggested the possibility, but I don't think I could have handled it if I didn't think that I could live as myself here, you know.
Hast du answer it? You can think about it first if you want, and tell us when you're ready.
Whenever you're ready.
You're ready.
Yeah.
I mean, the first big difference is that it's the age of the people that are going to the clubs.
The difference between England and Vienna. Mm-hmm.
So, do you want to? Should we start again? Or?
Yeah. Please.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The first big difference that hits you is the difference in age of the people that go to the clubs in Vienna compared to in England. Because most of the people in England that are into Northern Soul most of them are in their 40s, 50s, even 60s. There are some in their 30s, very few in their 20s. But you go to the dues in Vienna, and there are some older people there as well. There are a lot of people in their 30s. But there's also a lot of younger people. There's a lot of people in their 20s, early 20s, even late teens, who get into it through getting into the retro mod thing, and they get into it that way. And sometimes when I see that crowd, it reminds me of the age group and what people used to look like and what they were into when I first started going to these dues in the 80s. So it's kind of a little bit like a time warp, I suppose. Also, the dancing is not as developed here. It's not as polished. There are some young guys that are like learning to do acrobatic moves and stuff, and they got a brilliant energy and everything. And they're going to be really good, I think. But it just takes time, you know, to kind of master it, really. When you go to a do in England, I mean, sometimes you could go to a do, say, in Stoke, in the King's Hall or the Queen's Hall in Stoke, which is where I made some of those drawings. And most of the people are 50 or older, and they've all got big beer bellies, and they're not really looking very fit, but they're still bang into the music. And you can see the experience and the knowledge of the music in the way they move, even though they might not be able to do backdrops or anything anymore. They know the music. And
between the difference between Vienna and England, because there are older people, but they still can.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You can. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the situation in England, if you go to a big Northern Soul event, say at the King's Hall or the Queen's Hall in Stoke, this is a big dance hall, and it's full of people, and they're all about 40 or 50, and they're all on the dance floor, and some of them have got big beer bellies, and you know, they're not really very fit, and their children have grown up and left home, and they're back out enjoying themselves again. But the knowledge and the love of that music is still in there, and you see it in the way they move. They might not do a backdrop, but they're in tune, they're in harmony with that music, and you can see the knowledge of it and the love of it in the way they move. In Vienna, you have a much less kind of lived in, in a way less sophisticated way of dancing. But it's really just because they haven't been doing it as long. You know, there's some young guys at Otto Wagner who are sort of they're getting into the acrobatic thing now, and they've got a lovely energy, and they're starting to make their own moves and just starting to kind of relax into it, you know, a bit more. And I think in time they will be just as good as anybody else, you know. But it's a kind of thing that it does take time, and it goes on developing. Like me, for example, I'm 46, but my dancing now is much better than my dancing when I was 36 or when I was 26. Even though I have less energy, I am older. I'm in many ways I'm more worn out, but you kind of go on refining it and developing it in your own way as